Today we're going to talk about some of the important court cases that we've discussed this year. Remember, these court cases were all decided on in the Supreme Court. When the Supreme Court makes a decision on a case, they set a precedent or a tradition that all courts will follow thereafter. The first court case we talked about this year was Marbury versus Madison. In this court case, Thomas Jefferson ordered James Madison not to deliver any of John Adams' midnight appointments to their recipients. William Marbury did not receive the job, and he sued. The issue here is, does the Supreme Court have the authority to review acts of Congress and determine the constitutionality? The decision was the law that allowed Marbury to sue is unconstitutional. This is probably the most significant court case of all time because it established judicial review. Remember, judicial review is where a Supreme Court can look at any law or decision made by Congress or anybody in the government and decide if it is constitutional or unconstitutional. So just remember, Marbury versus Madison, judicial review, constitutional, unconstitutional. McCulloch versus Maryland is another court case we talked about. The issue here was Maryland wanted to tax the national bank in its state borders. Well, we know that a state cannot tax the nation. Remember, the nation under the Constitution is superior to the states. And so the significance of this court case is that the federal government is supreme over the state government. Another court case we talked about this year was Gibbons versus Ogden. The issue here was who has shipping rights on the Hudson River, New York or New Jersey. Because this river is in between both states, there was a fight over shipping rights. The decision was the federal government is able to regulate interstate commerce, meaning that if two states are fighting over a business, the national government can step in to decide for them. The significance of this is that the federal government is supreme over state government. This is the same significance as the last court case. So as you can see, under the Constitution, the federal government has more power than state governments. Worcester versus Georgia was another court case. Since the colonization era, the white population had made treaties with the Native Americans. Over time, they did not follow the treaties and began outlawing groups of people, even from visiting the tribes. So the issue here is, did Georgia have the right to remove Native Americans, even though it violated their treaty? The decision was only United States government could make treaties with the Native Americans, not states. And the significance is it enforced the Indian Removal Act. And then we had Dred Scott versus Sanford. Remember, Dred Scott was a slave, and his owner would travel between slave and free states with him. The issue here was because Dred Scott lived in an area that had abolished slavery, should he have been freed as well? The decision was Dred Scott was a slave and not a citizen. Therefore, he had no standing before the courts. The courts, in fact, said that he was a piece of property, and property cannot speak in a court. So his decision was not allowed. And the significance is it furthered the separation between the North and the South. Okay, that is all of the court cases we studied this year. Make sure you complete your notes on these.